Hey guys, what's up? Murphy's Opinions here, and today I'm coming at me with my final review of the James Bond series until the next film comes out, which we don't know when that is. So for now, this will be the final video. Today we'll be reviewing Spectre from 2015, directed by Sam Mendes. The plot of the story: a cryptic message sends Bond on a rogue mission to Mexico City, and eventually to Rome, where he meets Lucia, a forbidden widow of an infamous criminal. Bond infiltrates a secret meeting and uncovers the existence of a sinister organisation known as Spectre. Meanwhile, back in London, Max Divinia, known as C, the head of Central National Security, questions Bond's actions and challenges the relevance of MI6, led by M. Bond covertly enlists Moneypenny and Q to help him seek out Madeline Swan, the daughter of his older nemesis, Mr. White, who may hold the clue to the untangling web of Spectre. As the daughter of the assassin, she understands Bond in a way most cannot. As Bond ventures towards the heart of Spectre, he learns chilling connection between himself and the enemy that he seeks. So that's basically the plot of Spectre. Now let's just kind of get into the cast. So Daniel Craig returns once again to play James Bond, and this is another great performance from him. I think this and Skyfall, I think you could really argue, are two of his best performances. He's just so comfortable in the role in this film. He gets a lot more of a chance to kind of showcase his humour in this film especially. And I like that. I think Craig in this film is really great once again. Can't really complain. We've got the Bond girl Madeline Swan, played by Léa Seydoux. And yeah, she's a pretty good Bond girl actually. I wouldn't put her in like top 10. I wouldn't put her in the top 10 like best Bond girls. But she's a good Bond girl. You know, she'd probably, be just outside there, I think. But no, she's an interesting character. And, they give her a kind of... They make the character interesting and they kind of make her relevant to the plot, which I always think this should always be with a Bond girl, I think. Because you sometimes get those times where they just force them into the plot for no real reason. But this works, I do really like the Madeline Swan character. And then we've got Ernst Stavro Blofeld, or as at the start of the film he's Oberhauser, but then reveals himself to be Blofeld, played by Christoph Waltz. Gotta say, this was a very disappointing villain. I think it was always going to be quite a gamble, kind of, kind of linking all the previous villains from the previous Bond films into Spectre and stuff, and I honestly just wasn't really a big fan of Waltz's portrayal of Blofeld. It just seemed a bit too... he did the calm and kind of softly spoken kind of take, but he never did much apart from that. Like, even when he gets his face sort of damaged and, Bond's got him at gunpoint, he just still kind of does the same thing, and it's just sort of... That's not what I imagine Blofeld to be like. And then also when he's like, go on, kill me and stuff. It's just not very Blofeld-esque in my opinion. If you watch the Blofeld of the old films, the guy, when he realised, his plan failed, he would always be, he would always run off and stuff. And I just think that the whole portrayal of Blofeld was a bit of a fail here, in all honesty. And then you've got not Christoph Waltz, Dave Bautista. Don't know how I got them confused. Playing Mr. Hinks, and I actually really like this. Obviously I knew about Bautista because I'm actually a bit of a wrestling fan, a big wrestling fan. So obviously I was happy for Bautista to get a role in a Bond film. And I actually quite like the Mr. Hinks character. It's kind of a throwback to the old school kind of henchman who didn't really speak. Like Jaws and Odd Job and that sort of thing. But he does get one line at the end, when he says shit before he gets knocked off the train, which I don't know if they really should have done that, but the overall Mr. Hinks character is really cool, and I like how they made him, such a physical threat, and I really did like this henchman. I actually think he might be one of the better henchmen in the series, actually. Then we've got the character Lucia Scaria, played by Monica Bellucci. Was weird because they heavily advertised, saying Monica Bellucci is going to be in this film, but she's hardly in it. I was kind of disappointed. I thought maybe they would have explored her character a bit more. She's just not in the film long enough, really, to have much of an impact, unfortunately. Which is a shame, because I think if they'd used her more, given the character more of a backstory, it could have been quite interesting, but didn't quite work out that way. And we see the return of Mr. White, played by Jesper Christensen. And unfortunately, Mr. White dies, so that's kind of the end of that character. And I like the kind of bit with him and Bond and how, he's sort of living out in the, is it the Alps? I think it's the Alps. And he's sort of, just living in this house. And it's quite, you actually feel quite sad for him, despite him, kind of being a villain throughout the, despite seeing him in Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. Yeah, it was still quite chilling to kind of see him kill himself and everything. And, despite not being in the film for that long, it was still cool to kind of see Mr. White in this film. And then we've obviously got, the MI6 regulars. Ralph Fiennes as M. I really like in this film. I think, he does a really good job here of kind of commanding an authority over Bond and that sort of thing, and I think it really works. And then obviously Ben Whishaw, once again, is great as Q. Naomi Harris as Moneypenny I really like here. I think she's, again, continues her great chemistry with Daniel Craig in this film. But then we've got the character, as I mentioned in the plot, Max Denby, or however you say his surname. I honestly don't know how to pronounce that. Or C as he's called. And I don't mind the kind of subplot. It's good that they have Q and Moneypenny more involved in the film, I guess. But Andrew Scott, he does what he can with the role, but the whole C character doesn't really need to do much anyway. But the whole thing, it was alright, I guess. It was interesting, I guess, to kind of have him be a kind of a ploy for Spectre in a sense, but ultimately it was not really kind of the main plot, so they didn't make that big of a deal out of it. Anyway, now let's get on to the score of the film. Thomas Newman does the score again for this film, and yeah, I mean, it's a pretty solid score, I guess. It's not as, I wouldn't say it's kind of as, I'd say it's not as good as Skyfall's score. I mean, it's just, I wouldn't, it's one of those scores, it's, again, as a kind of an individual score on its own, it's pretty good, but I guess if you compare it with the rest of the Bond films, it doesn't really stand out that much. The title song, The Writings on the Wall by Sam Smith, I do quite like the song. I wouldn't say it's one of my absolute favourite Bond themes, but I do think it's a good, solid entry. A lot of people are giving it kind of hate and stuff. I disagree. I think it's actually a pretty good song. But as I said, just not as good as kind of the other entries into the series. I just think there are much better Bond themes out there, really. So yeah, let's go on to the kind of some of the main scenes and stuff and that sort of thing. So the opening title sequence I thought was actually pretty well done. I like the kind of the opening kind of title sequence because they do that kind of one shot where it's Bond walking into the hotel. And it's done all in one shot, and it's really well done actually. And then you've got the whole chasing on the helicopter. I think that's just a really good action scene in general. Creates a lot of suspense and that sort of thing. So yeah, I really do like the opening title sequence. You've got the car chase in Rome as well, which is really good as well. I do quite like that. And obviously you've got when Madeline Swan gets captured by Mr. Hinks. You've got Bond kind of flying the plane trying to rescue her and stuff. That's a really well done scene. That's a very, very good chase. And the train fight as well between Bond and Mr. Hinks, where, well, he doesn't. It's not confirmed that he dies, but it's a possibility that Mr. Hinks does die in that. And so yeah, there's some pretty good action sequences in this film. But overall, what are my kind of thoughts on Spectre? Well, this is what I kind of think. I think it's a good film. I do think it's getting too much stick. However, I do think the main problem is not necessarily the cast. It's more the kind of story they're trying to tell. I think. The whole thing with Blofeld could have worked, but the whole fact that they kind of, the whole origin of kind of why Blofeld's doing what he's doing is really dumb. It's sort of like, oh, you were adopted by my biological dad, and he showed you more care to me. It was just so stupid. It just didn't make any sense. I wouldn't have minded the whole just him wanting to take over the world. I know that's a bit cliche now, but it would be much better than this whole kind of, oh, Daddy loved you more than me. It's just dumb. I'm sorry. I think it's very dumb, and I think Waltz in this film is pretty boring. And I know he's a good actor in other films, but in this film I just think he really falls flat, unfortunately. Yeah, and I just think that's where Spectre kind of falls for me. So it's not. I wouldn't say it's definitely a good entry into the series. I wouldn't say it's one of the all-time greatest Bond films, but still a solid entry into the series. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and my review of the whole entire James Bond series. It's been a hell of a ride. Glad that you guys were there to watch all the way through. So next, I think for my next kind of series of videos, I'm going to be doing something completely different. So look out for that. So give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't, comment below, follow me on Twitter, ars.fm, subscribe to my main channel, and once again, thanks for watching, guys.